if you are seeing a mental health professional and they seem not that enthusiastic to see you, I would look for someone else. I'd rather keep it real with ya. I know sometimes we feel an obligation. Well, people like me, people like me who have been raised to kind of be people pleasers, we feel an obligation to our therapist to like continue seeing them. But you gotta understand, like, you paying them. So if they're not giving you what you paying them for, go somewhere else. You don't need to pay them, you know? And I thought in the beginning when I was seeing like those awful people that I needed to like keep seeing them. You don't need to keep seeing them. You can literally go somewhere else. And a good therapist will understand, hey, yeah, we're not a good fit. I think that, you know, maybe they have somebody else they think is a better fit. There were other therapists who I've seen where they weren't giving me what I needed, and I couldn't fully like understand it at first. So the therapist that I got after leaving college was recommended to me by the white woman therapist I was seeing in college. And it's like, she's fine. She's fine. But the thing about her is that she handles me with kid gloves. You know, she's very like soft about things. She tries to be neutral a lot. But the thing about people like me with the traumas that I have, someone who is neutral, I'm going to automatically think that that person is against me. You know what I mean? So if I say something and she tries to have like no reaction in her face or in her voice, my mind immediately goes to, she disagrees with you. She thinks you're wrong. She don't even like talking to you right now. You're getting on her nerves. You're annoying her. Like, it does all of that. Versus my trauma therapist, who is Native American, she's very much like, if I say something to her, she'd be like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And I'd be like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Or I would say something about my mom doing something and she'd be like, like she would get mad, and I'd be like, oh, this is so validating that she is so expressive with her emotions and her feelings about things and letting me know, no, that wasn't okay. No, that person's crazy. No, they shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't let them do that. No, you need boundaries. Like, a therapist like that is very, very good for me because it's very clear what their feelings are and what their ideas are about things. And again, like this, she's not a black woman, she's Native American, but she can understand sometimes different like issues that people have between the races. Like, she's culturally competent. So she can understand, like, if I have a friend who's struggling with their family or something and they happen to be Asian, you know, like, that's a whole thing that you gotta like understand. Like, it's not the same as what we would be like traditionally thinking about, you know, especially if there's someone who they're older, but they still live with their parents, you know, it may be a part of their culture that they still live with their parents, and she understands those things. But I know I started talking about myself, but let me just bring this back around. So same thing when you're looking for doctors, when you are looking for a mental health professional, when you are looking for a therapist, you want to pay attention to what they value and see if it aligns with your values. If you are going to someone just because they're a therapist or just because your friend sees them and they think they're great, your friend ain't you. You have to look at like what their specialties are. So like my trauma therapist, her specialty is trauma. She deals with trauma 9 to 5. You know what I mean? Like, she is dealing with trauma in children, trauma in adults, inner child stuff. Like, that's all she do all the time. You know, EMDR, like, that's somebody who can help me really get up in here and deal with those issues. Some therapists deal with marriage, you know, some therapists deal primarily with relationships, and that's what they focus on. I'm single. Fuck, I'm going to a marriage specialist for. I don't need to talk to that person. Some therapists deal with people who are LGBT, you know. I say this. You never know. So I could go to somebody who deals with LGBT and then be like, I'm asexual. And they be like, that's not real. You know what I mean? You might have that situation. So that's why I don't go to somebody just because they're LGBT, because it might be that they're like lesbian and they could have all these biases that the lesbian community has, and they're not fucking with you if you bi, or they're not fucking with you if you're a trans woman. So LGBT is way too broad of a thing. Like, you want, like, if you're trans and you're looking for somebody, you want somebody who specializes in dealing with people who are transitioning. You know what I mean? If your issues that you have a lot or your traumas that you have a lot are around race, racism, police brutality, bullying because of your race, all of that stuff, it may help you to see somebody who is of the same race as you. But also be warned, because what did they say? What's the thing? All skin folk ain't kin folk. You may think you going to see a black person. They might be a hotep. You don't fucking know. They might be somebody who doesn't like you just because you're a young black person, and they have traditional values and they don't like all the stuff that you're talking about. They might be one of them Uncle Toms and be mad at you for disrespecting the white people. So you can't just go to someone based off, oh, they're a black person, I'm gonna go to them. Oh, they're a woman, I'm gonna go to them. Oh, they're a lesbian, I'm gonna go to them. You can't just go based off that. You got to look at literally like what their experience is and what they focus on, so that you know if they're going to be able to tackle what you tackle. Some people in the comments of the last video, someone said that they wanted somebody who was more equipped to deal with autistic people. And I was like, that is a very specific thing. And it's a huge part of your identity that you want to look at when you're finding a mental health professional. You don't want to be talking to somebody who's never dealt with autistic people, or worse, they've dealt with them in the sense of trying to train you on how to be normal. You don't want that person. And, you don't want to be giving your money to them and like wasting your time. And they do all of this stuff. You don't want to go to a psychiatrist who looks at you and thinks, oh, I just need to drug you up and then you'll be normal, because that may not be what you need. Like for my psychiatrist, I'm only on one medication now from him, because we would try different things. And we got to the point, like when I got to a point where I said, look, I didn't take my trazodone for a week and I didn't feel any different. And he was like, well, we don't need to be giving it to you if you don't feel nothing. He's like all fine with me being minimalist about the medication. He's not going to throw a bunch of stuff at me just because I'm bipolar, just because I have anxiety. He doesn't do that. He listens to what I feel. And sometimes I might say, I'm taking too many fucking meds. I don't want to do all of this. And he'll be like, let's work on finding other ways to deal with your anxiety. If you don't want to try, anxiety meds, or you want to try this medication, you can't really take anxiety meds with that. Let's work on finding you other ways to deal with your anxiety. And that's totally fine. You might want somebody who's very spiritual, who comforts you by telling you that God gonna make a way, whatever. Then you want somebody who's Christian. You don't want to go to an atheist therapist and be asking them to comfort you about your struggles with God. Now, if you don't want to be a Christian anymore, you might want an atheist therapist, help give you that further information. But honestly, a good therapist is going to check those things with you first. So like when I started therapy with the women that I see outside of college, they had me go through a list of sexuality, race, gender, religious status, things that you primarily want to work on. They have you go through that. They're not really going to put whatever their opinions about, certain religions or anything on you. They're really good about keeping that to themselves. And sometimes they will share with you if they, like, one of my therapists was like, my family's kind of like yours. So yeah, the holidays is stressful for me too. And that's totally fine for them to share that, and me feeling like, oh, they really understand me because their family is like my family. That's not something that they're gonna put out on the thing, but you'll get that sense probably like in the first 2 sessions if they really, really understand what you're going through, or if they're just doing the therapist thing and just listening to you. Let me just break it down. So before you even go to the therapist, you want to look at their religion, race, gender, sexuality if they say it. Usually they won't say it if they're straight, but they'll say it if they're like lesbian or something. Then you want to look at, first, make sure those demographics work for you. Then you want to look at what they specialize in. And if they say for 15 years, I've been doing family, something specifically about family. I'm focused on the family for 15 years. Okay. Do you want somebody who's super focused on the family? I mean, I don't, but maybe you do. You know what I mean? Somebody who's going to fight for you to have a good relationship with your family. They may say they do family and marriage specialties. Some may say they deal mostly with adolescents. So they deal with like teenagers and like sometimes they mostly deal with kids and teenagers. Maybe you want somebody like that. Like for me, when I was under the age of 18, I wanted somebody who dealt with adolescents because they would understand more like my hormones and how all of that's going in like high school and how that's interacted with my mental health. So it would help based on your age if they focus on that. Maybe somebody focuses a lot on survivors of abuse. So I was in a women's group, and one of the women in the group was also in another group where she was that was specifically for people experiencing domestic violence. And it got to the point where she was better served by being in the domestic violence group than she was by being in a general women's group, because general women's group, we just talk about general shit. We're not really focusing on, the issues that she needed help with. And I was totally fine with that. None of us feel offended that she had to leave our group and focus on that group. Like, that group is giving her what she needs, and that's important. So does somebody focus on domestic violence? Does somebody focus on trauma? So seeing a trauma-informed therapist versus seeing someone who's not trauma-informed, I can really see the difference there. Because a not trauma-informed therapist probably would have discharged me by now for being fine and not needing therapy anymore. But a trauma-informed therapist would be like, oh, you're fine now? Let's tackle these issues that you done brought up in the last year of us talking and like really get to work. So, if you are somebody who feel like you've had adverse childhood experiences or experienced trauma, you might want somebody who's trauma focused. It might be hard to find someone who is trauma focused. I get it. You might have to settle for a minute until you can find somebody who's trauma focused. But if ultimately what you want is to heal from trauma, you're going to want somebody who is trauma focused down the road. If you want somebody who deals with primarily anxiety and depression, because those are very common, there are people who they specialize in anxiety and depression. There are people who have had to specialize in this because of the pandemic has caused a lot of anxiety and depression, and agoraphobia, and people not wanting to go around other people or leave their house. I'm struggling right now. So people invited me out and I'm like, hey, I like you guys, but I really don't want to be around people right now. I can't. It's just too much. No, I don't want to go to group. It's too many people. 10 people is too many people for me. I'm overwhelmed thinking about it right now. And so like you want somebody who specializes in those things, and then also look at how long they've been in practice. Some people want somebody who's been doing this for a very long time. I personally want somebody who's a little bit new to the game, not super new, but a little bit new to the game, because they've gotten all of the most recent up-to-date training. So, if I go see somebody old as fuck, they might be from back in the day when homosexuality was in the DSM. I don't want to mess with somebody who that's what they were trained under. That's when they got their degree. I don't want to really mess with those people. But yeah, so that's important. Another thing about my therapist that I see that made me feel like, oh, these people are the real deal is, so my psychiatrist, I think he also works at a jail. So he deals with people who are basically end up in the system because of their mental illness. So people who are severe, like schizophrenics and everything, a schizophrenic person, they act out in public, the police gets called on them. It happens, unfortunately. And then my therapist in particular, and then I think also my trauma therapist, they worked in this nonprofit that dealt with kids who were basically thrown away by their schools or their parents. So these were kids who experienced all types of abuse and had like behavioral issues as a result of it. And so I was like, damn, y'all was in the trenches. So I know they can handle my stuff, but sometimes I would feel like, oh, maybe my stuff isn't as serious as what you've dealt with. But they've been very upfront and accommodating about the fact that what happened to you was really bad. And we really understand trauma, and not everything that's traumatic to one person is traumatic to the next person. And so they've been very validating about all of that. But I like my therapist being in their 30s. Like my trauma therapist, I think she's single. We've never talked about it, but I think she's single. And she like lives with her family's Native American thing. And then my other therapist is single, but then she had a baby recently. So she like has kind of gotten into, helping people who are like new mothers and knowing all of those resources as well. So people will grow and they will change. And, it's not a fix that the therapist who acts one way now is going to act the same way later. But if your therapist is willing to learn and grow, like my trauma therapist, she's continuously going to these trainings and these seminars where she's learning about different ways to tackle trauma. Like she's always doing that. And she'll come back to me and say, hey, I learned about this new trauma therapy, and it has to be done to me before I do it to someone. So if I've gone through it, and then the other therapists in the office have gone through it, and it might be something that works for you, we could try that if that's something that you want. So I guess I'm saying all of this to say, don't go to somebody who thinks that they have it all figured out from the first time meeting you, because humans are really complex. And if you go to somebody and they have this air about them where they're like, I know everything, that tells me that they're kind of arrogant and they're not going to be willing to learn from like what's going on with you. And they may like either pull from the book, or they'll just, not acknowledge some of the issues that you're dealing with. Cause like I said, when I go to therapy, I feel like new shit pops up. And I feel like if I was seeing one of them therapists who just thought they knew everything, I wouldn't have been growing the way I am to where this new shit is popping up. Because some of the things that happen to me might sound completely normal to certain therapists of certain backgrounds. They might say, well, of course that happened to you. Like, it's your parents' responsibility to do those things to you. Whereas like my trauma therapist is like, no, that's fucked up. That's a violation. And I don't agree with that at all. And I'm really mad at your parents right now. I love it when my therapist gets mad at my family members. It's just so validating, and and if you're somebody, and this won't be on their site, but if you go see them and you get the sense that they are someone who's very much, how do I put this? So like my regular therapist, very much, she has therapy face, or some people might call it resting bitch face. She doesn't want to be over emotional for fear that it could trigger me. And some people, like I have a friend who I talked her into getting therapy. I was very adamant when I was talking to my therapist about finding her a therapist that this is someone who is very sensitive. And so she would need someone who is going to handle her with kid gloves because of the fact that she is so sensitive. Someone like my trauma therapist who would be like, what the fuck? That's crazy. These people are, you know what I mean? Like somebody who'd be like expressive like that might be too much for her. She might want someone who's like, okay, I understand. I talk to her in a soft voice, and, that's what she needs because she's a very sensitive person. I'm sensitive too, but in different ways. And there's nothing more validating to me than when I'm sharing something bad that happened to me and the person I'm sharing it with gets visibly upset. Like that makes me really happy because I'm like, so you see too that this is a fucked up situation, right? Yeah. And if you just have your face like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Get this hair off your mic. Okay. I'm going to look at that like what I'm saying must not be serious enough for you to have no real response to what I'm saying. I must be overreacting. I'll start gaslighting myself because it's been done to me so much because of how the person I'm talking to responds to what I'm saying. So like when I'm sharing something, the person I'm sharing it with has to respond with a very clear, that's not okay. I'm sorry that happened to you. That should not have been happening to you. That should not have been done to you. Like I need that. And that's why I really like my trauma therapist, because even though I have trauma and she deals with people who has trauma, she has very clear stance on what is okay and what's not okay based on her years of experience dealing with people of all ages who've experienced significant amounts of trauma. She's seen all different types of trauma. So I say all of this to say, do your research on a therapist. And if the first therapist isn't good for you, don't take that to mean that all therapists are bad for you. There's very few therapists who are exactly the same. And sometimes therapists who are the same kind of hang out with each other so you can know what network to avoid. But like, please do not give up on finding a therapist. Do not feel like the first therapist I went to was a bitch, so all therapists are bitches and I can't do this anymore and I'm done with it. It's not going to help me. Like I know people like that. Like I'm actively telling people now, like, Therapy is not what you think. It's not what it used to be. I think a lot of people have an idea of therapy from like the media or whatever, or they had a therapist when they were younger. That's a different type of therapy. Like the type of therapist your parent gets for you because they want you to act right is very different than the type of therapist that you yourself are going to choose as an adult. I say all this to say, if you don't have a therapist, please go get a therapist, even if you think you don't need a therapist. And then if you saw a therapist in the past and you didn't like them or they weren't your cup of tea, keep trying, because there's going to be one that is. And I know some of you live in places where it's not a lot of therapists. Like I know some people in Oklahoma, and they're like in these like super small towns and there aren't many therapists around them, or the therapists they do have don't really specialize in what they need. With that, I would say look for like a therapist online. So like the what's it called? Not Hello Talk, that's for language exchange. BetterHelp, and I think Talkspace, I think is what it's called. But these like online therapists might be better for you, so you can find somebody who actually specializes in what you need, because you could be in a situation where you're in a super small town and there's nobody around, or the people who are therapists there, they know your parents because it's like 200 people in the city, and so of course you see them at the grocery store and their parents know you see them, and it becomes a whole problem. For those situations, I would recommend finding someone online and talking to them about what you're going through. But don't give up on therapy. Do not give up on therapy. Some of you need therapy. You also need psychiatry. Don't give up on a psychiatrist. You might find your first psychiatrist or your second psychiatrist might be trash because you were just looking for somebody to prescribe the pills, or you were just looking for somebody who was going to be open or who was going to be accepting new patients. And so you got in there. That's fine. Get in there, get your meds. But while you in there, just like a job, you need to be looking for other psychiatrists who are going to meet your needs too, because you don't want someone who's just going to give you pills and then be like, I'm not your therapist, go talk to your therapist about all the other stuff you got going on. Like, you want somebody who's going to check in with you, ask you how things are going in your life, ask you how things are going with the meds. Are you having nightmares that you didn't have before with the meds? You know, are you in a more stressful situation where you may feel like you need more of your medication to feel normal? Like, these are things that a real good psychiatrist is going to check in with you. They're not just going to weigh you and then say bye, and then you was only there for 10 minutes, but you paid them for the hour. You know what I mean? Those people, they exist because they do. A lot of different types of people can be therapists. And psychiatrists, it's just, you know, if you get the degree and you pass the test, fine. But it's what they do after that that's really important. What they choose to focus on, who they choose to work with. That's going to tell a lot about how they're going to respond to your unique situation. And so you want to pay attention to that. Seeing a therapist or a psychiatrist, you're interviewing them. Like, when you meet them, you see them for the first time and you tell them what you're going through, you're interviewing them like a job, because you're about to pay them. You know, they about to take money from you. So you want to treat it like, I'm about to pay you, so I need to know you're going to be able to fix my issues, or at least help me learn how to fix my own issues. That's what you want. You don't want somebody who's just going to give you Xanax and then send you on. You know what I mean? If you're interested in actually healing. Now, if you're just trying to get high, I can't really advise on that, but do you, boo. But if you're actually trying to heal, like I'm trying to heal, like I know several of people who be commenting are trying to heal, you want to be very, very serious and picky about who you want to share your life with, basically. Because depending on where you are, this might be the therapist that you see for the next 10, 20 years. You don't want to spend 20 years with somebody and they're trash or they're not the right fit for you. That's not what you want. I would love to see my trauma therapist for the next 10, 20 years. But I got to get the fuck out of this city. I got to go. I can't be here no more. I got to leave. I got to leave the city. Maybe leave the state. I don't know. Maybe leave the country. I don't know. So when I do leave, I'm going to be very serious and very conscious about who I'm going to be talking to and who I'm going to be sharing all my information with and who I'm going to be sharing my life with and my struggles with. I'm not going to take just anybody who's there. You know what I mean? It's a very serious thing, and you got to take it seriously, because nobody's going to take it seriously for you. But yeah, so I've said all that. I've done all this talking. But like I said, you know, don't give up. Keep chasing the dream, I guess, of one day you will be mentally healthy. One day you will be the person that you've always wanted to be. And you know that part of being that person is being somebody who regularly goes to therapy or psychiatry, and you're taking care of your mental health. Even if you don't feel like you have a lot of serious issues, if you just experience a lot of stress or anxiety, that's a therapist is going to help you with that. Whether they're going to help you with meditation or like different coping strategies, they have all of these resources that they go to school to get that they can use to help you. So don't give up on trying to find somebody who's going to be able to help you with even the smallest problems in your life, because they are out there. So thank you guys for listening to me. Thank you guys for being with me on my journey of mental health and healing, and just like, you know, liking myself more, because that's the thing I need. That's the thing a lot of us need. But like I always say, you guys, you know, like, make sure you take your naps. I'm not taking my naps. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I gotta keep it real. I'm not taking my naps. I'm trying. It's not working. I think I have too much anxiety, or I'm drinking too much green tea, whatever. Not taking my naps. But I am drinking my water, and I am eating. You know what bitch is eating. I am eating. I am exercising. I'm seeing my therapist regularly. And I am working on the things that I need to work on in order to heal. And I'm trying to be kind to myself about things that I'm not doing so well at. And I recommend the same thing for you guys, to be kind to yourself if you feel like you're not doing so well at, you know, I haven't been taking my naps, but that's okay. Maybe I'm just getting more sleep at night. It could be. But yeah, like, take care of yourself and be kind to yourself, because you deserve it. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.